This isn't the Wild West you saw in movies. This is the version they didn't want you to know. You don't wake to the sound of roosters or a mother's lullaby. You wake to the creak of saddle leather and the clinking rhythm of spurs on the porch. Your name is Myra Maybelle Shirley, though you'll spend most of your life making sure no one calls you that. You're not the starched white type. Lace and linen? That's for women who never had to reload. The year is 1848. And Dallas isn't yet the booming sprawl of highways and billboards. It's a dusty town where opportunity and bullets travel together.
Your Honor.
You're born into a wealthy Southern family. And at first glance, it looks like you might be headed for finishing school and garden parties. But that's not your story. Your daddy owns an inn and a blacksmith shop. But more importantly, he owns horses, and you learn how to ride before you learn how to curtsy. The air smells like scorched cotton and wood smoke. The kind of air that curls into your lungs and makes you wonder what it'd feel like to disappear into the horizon.
She was such a sweet
And that's
girl.
the thing. You never really belonged in parlors or drawing rooms. You belonged in the saddle, chasing something wild and unnamed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time down in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You remember your mother's disapproving glance when you raced the neighbor boys and left them all coughing up dust. You remember how your skirts caught on the fence post the first time you snuck out wearing trousers. And you definitely remember the cold slap of water after falling off your first Mustang, because you were trying to ride it standing up. Your family moves from Missouri to Texas just before the war. And it's there in Carthage that the first rumors of your wildness begin to simmer. You're sharp with words and sharper with eyes. One boy says you hexed his horse after he pulled your braid. Another claims you carry a knife in your boot. Neither are wrong. You attend the Carthage Female Academy, a place meant to polish girls into something breakable. You learn piano, French, and the kind of etiquette that would make a preacher swoon. But you also learn the subtle art of lying with a smile. Sneaking your brother's revolver into your school bag, and memorizing every creek bed that could hide a runaway. Mainstream historians point out you were educated far beyond most women of your time. But they often leave out the part where you also taught yourself how to pick a pocket without smudging your gloves. Fringe accounts claim your father was secretly involved in Confederate gun smuggling. Using the family business as a front. You're just a teenager, but you already know how to ride with a message hidden in your corset boning. Historians still argue whether you chose your path, or if the path chose you the moment war broke out and the world stopped pretending women had to wait inside. You don't care much for debates. You care about freedom, and freedom doesn't come wrapped in ribbon. The Civil War cracks your world in half. Dallas turns from a town of dreams to a pit of blood and treachery. Some of your friends vanish into Union camps. Others return missing limbs and softness. You, though, you grow quieter, colder. The death of your brother Bud during a skirmish with Union soldiers breaks something in you. Or maybe it wakes something. He dies young, reckless, and angry. And a part of you decides you'll never let the world forget him. Or you. There's a fire in your family now, both literal and figurative. Your family's land is ravaged. And you see, up close, how the law shifts like a snake in the grass. You learn to talk to bounty hunters like poker players. Never show your tell. Always leave before the second drink. One afternoon, sitting on a porch with your father's old Spencer rifle across your lap. You think, this town can't hold me. It's not made for women like me. And you're right. There's a crossroads waiting. A place where outlaws tip their hats. Where bullet scars pass for wedding rings. And where your name, Belle Starr, isn't just whispered. It's feared. But not yet. Tonight, you're still Myra. Still halfway between debutante and desperado. The sun sets behind the cotton fields, casting everything in gold. You tilt your head, listening for the clip-clop of returning horses. but all you hear is wind. A warning? Or an invitation? You won't know until you follow it. And you will. Because that's what bandit queens do, they ride. You're not just a girl with grit. You're a girl with a plan, though it doesn't always unfold the way you want it to. By the time you're 17, the war has twisted the South into something unrecognizable. The Shirley family is no longer the image of Southern wealth and respectability. Your father's businesses are crumbling, and your mother clutches her pearls a little tighter every time she hears gunfire in the distance. But you feel strangely alive. You ride more than you sleep. At first, it's just to deliver things, notes, food, whispered secrets. But soon, you find yourself doing more than running errands. You're scouting, watching, learning which roads are safest at night, which marshals take bribes, and how long it takes to reload a Colt .45 when someone's heart is pounding. They say you carried a knife under your dress, strapped to your thigh like some twisted corsage. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's just something you told the boys to make them squirm. Either way, it worked. In town, you're the mystery. Polished, polite, but always a little too quiet. A little too quick to glance at the door. You smile when spoken to. But people can feel it, the edge in your posture. The way you linger a beat too long near the gunsmith's window. You weren't built for the kitchen. You were built for the saddle. The boys at the academy would try to impress you with their fencing skills and recited poetry. But you knew better. You watched how they flinched when a pistol fired too close. You saw how quickly they turned pale at the sight of blood. You never told them about the rabbit you skinned in the woods. Or the night you spent crouched in silence while a Union patrol passed 10 feet from your hiding place. You knew they wouldn't understand. There's a story you like to tell, true or not, about how you once challenged a boy to a race on horseback. And when he refused, you smacked his mare on the flank and took off without him. The town watched you blaze past the saloon, petticoats flying like battle flags. You didn't stop until your horse gave out. And even then, you didn't look back. Historians often note how unusual it was for a young woman to have such autonomy. Especially in the post-war South. But they miss the nuance. They don't see the quiet calculation behind your every move. The way you studied your reflection not for beauty, but for believability. Could this face get me out of a jail cell? Could this smile buy me one more chance? There's an old superstition whispered by the women in town. That girls like you are born under cursed stars. That your laugh is a spell and your walk a warning. Maybe they're right. Fringe researchers claim you practiced subtle forms of folk magic, leaving pennies heads up at crossroads. Tying horsehair into knots for protection. Whispering names backward under your breath. But you always said the only spell you needed was a good aim and a faster horse. You fall in love, or something close to it, with a man named Jim Reed. He's got charm in his grin and danger in his pockets. A gambler, a writer, a man who knows what it means to disappear when things get too hot. You follow him like smoke follows fire. Your family doesn't approve, but their disapproval comes too late. You're already riding shotgun, already learning how to roll dice and count cards, already watching his back when tempers flare at the saloon. You married Jim in 1866. You're 18 and armed with optimism and a 6-shooter. That year, the newspapers begin printing rumors of a bandit Belle traveling with a man wanted for murder. Some say she's just a distraction. Others say she's the brains of the operation. You don't confirm either version. Why should you? Your first child, Rosie, is born in 1868. She's got your eyes and Jim's restlessness. You sing her to sleep with outlaw lullabies and teach her early that trust is something you never give away for free. There's a moment, brief but sharp, when you think about stopping. About building something steady, a little home, a little peace. But peace doesn't stick to you. Not for long. Jim falls deeper into trouble. Cattle rustling, robbery, a man ends up dead, and the law starts sniffing closer. You move constantly, Dallas, then Arkansas, then into the murky shadows of Indian Territory. Historians still argue whether you were truly involved in Jim's crimes or simply riding beside him out of loyalty. But they forget how love works in the Wild West. It's not about roses and sonnets. It's about sharing silence, bullets, and the long stretches of road where no one else will follow. Fringe accounts say you once outshot Jim in a drunken bet and refused to let him forget it for weeks. That you carved your name into the handle of his revolver when he left it behind one night, just to remind him who had the better aim. Eventually, Jim's luck runs out. In 1874, he's gunned down near Paris, Texas. The papers say it was over a land dispute. You know better. You bury him with more anger than sorrow. And then you ride on. Not back home, not toward safety, but deeper into the lawless veins of Oklahoma, where names don't matter and legends grow like weeds. This is where the real story starts. Because without Jim, there's no one to outrun. And without anyone to protect, there's no one to slow you down. So you do what any self-respecting outlaw queen would do. You disappear into the dust, pistol at your hip, and a storm behind your eyes. You don't mourn like most people. You don't sit still, wear black, or whisper prayers into the night. After Jim dies, you ride, and the farther you ride, the less anyone calls you Myra. By the time you cross into Indian territory, you're just Belle Starr. No middle names, no maiden names, just Belle and Starr. Like the bullet streak in the sky right before it tears through the quiet. This isn't the Oklahoma territory that textbooks describe in neat timelines. It's wild, shifting, and half-invented. It's a patchwork of native lands, outlaw hideouts, and crooked trails where maps lie more than they guide. You pick your way through it like a song you half remember, stepping over ghosts and ducking under legends. You shack up near the Canadian River, a place with more snakes than lawmen. The land is soaked in stories, gunfights, Cherokee feuds, Comanche warnings carved into tree bark. You learn to read the ground the way some folks read palms. Your daughter Rosie stays with you, quiet and watchful. You raise her on hard truths. Trust your gut. Keep your boots dry, and never point a gun unless you mean it. You start calling her Pearl, like something beautiful found in mud. Because that's what you both are now, treasures made under pressure. And just when the dust starts to settle, a new name appears on your horizon, Sam Starr. He's not like Jim. Jim was a spark. Sam is a fire already burning. A Cherokee outlaw, sharp-eyed and soft-voiced, with a reputation that travels faster than a telegraph. You meet him not in a saloon or a dance, but in a courtroom, both of you being fined for horse theft. You laugh when you hear the charges. Because of course you do. How else would two legends meet? Mainstream historians love to romanticize this moment. The queen of the bandits meets her king. But they skip the part where you threaten to shoot him if he ever cheats at poker. They forget that your wedding dress had a hidden knife sewn into the hem. The marriage is less about love and more about survival. You need someone who knows the land. He needs someone who knows how to twist the law. Together, you become something dangerous. You settle on a ranch in Younger's Bend, named for the younger brothers of the James Gang, with whom you've shared more than one campfire. The place becomes your fortress. A place where stolen horses graze freely and anyone wearing a badge gets a warning shot before the gate opens. There's no sheriff out here. Just rivers and revenge. You build a home with Sam, if you can call it that. A shack, patched with leftover sins and bullet holes. You cook over fire, wash with river water, and sleep with your boots near the bedroll. Fringe stories say you carved spells into the windowsills to keep the law away. Others say you bribed every deputy within 50 miles. Maybe both are true, maybe none. That's the luxury of being a legend. You can't be fact-checked if you're too fast to catch. You have a son, Edwin, and you swear he kicks harder than a mule even before he's born. Some nights, you hold him against your chest and wonder if he'll grow up to shoot like you. Some nights, you just hope he survives long enough to find out. Historians still argue whether you led your own gang or merely rode alongside Sam's crew. The truth is muddier. You didn't need a gang. You were a gang. When Belle Starr rode into a town, people locked their doors, not because of what you'd done, but what they heard you'd done. One winter, you're accused of harboring fugitives. A marshal from Fort Smith shows up with a warrant and two young deputies. You meet him on the porch with your rifle resting casual-like against your hip. He reads the warrant, you smile, and then you tell him they've got 5 minutes to leave before the coyotes get curious. They leave. That kind of story spreads fast. Especially when it's true. You and Sam start to collect strays. Not just horses, but people, thieves, gamblers, runaways. Your shack becomes a magnet for misfits. And the government starts to take notice. But you know how to dance with the law. You bribe when you have to. You lie when it's easier. And when those don't work, you disappear until the ink dries on the warrant. Sam teaches you Cherokee words. You teach him how to rig a deck. You fight more than you kiss. But it works. For a while. Then one day, you look out across the tall grass and realize something's changing. Not just the land. You're becoming something more than an outlaw. You're becoming myth. It starts with a name. Jesse James. You hear it before you ever see him. In the whispers behind bar counters. In the tremble of marshals too proud to admit fear. The name rides ahead like thunder before a storm. And when you finally meet him, you almost laugh. Because Jesse James isn't some monster. He's just a man. Tired eyes. Hands too quick. Voice soft like cotton soaked in whiskey. And yet, he moves like he knows bullets have to ask permission before hitting him. You crossed paths in the twilight haze of Oklahoma territory. When legends still bump into each other in taverns lit by kerosene and half-truths. He's already got songs written about him. You're working on your first chorus. Sam introduces you. Jesse tips his hat. You size him up with one glance and think, not bad, but I bet he'd flinch if I drew first. The James gang has been bleeding train lines for years. Robberies timed to the second. Hostages untouched. And always, they vanish before the next horse neighs. It's theatrical, almost poetic. You're not trying to join them. You're just trying to learn. And learn you do. From Jesse, you pick up a new rhythm, how to plan in threes. One escape. One backup. And one to throw off the scent. From Frank James, you learn how to make a confession sound like a sermon. You sit around firelight, listening to stories of Pinkerton agents, sabotaged rail lines, and secret hideouts built into church basements. Mainstream historians claim you were a fringe associate of the James gang. Just a tag-along, but those folks never heard you argue logistics with Jesse at midnight. Or saw you teach one of his men how to rewrap dynamite for dry transport. Fringe historians go even further, suggesting you coordinated multiple heists using your own network, safe houses from Fort Smith to Little Rock. Some even speculate you used your Bandit Queen image to mask a larger operation of supply theft and weapons trades between outlaw bands. There's no proof, of course. But you never needed proof. You needed plausible deniability and a fast horse. One night, after a botched train hit near the Kansas border, you, Sam, and two of Jess's men hunker down in a cave while marshals search the area. You stay silent for hours, counting each drip of water from the ceiling like a metronome. You scared? One of them asks. You shake your head and whisper back, only if we run out of tobacco. Even Jesse laughs. It's that night he calls you the Bandit Queen for the first time. You don't say anything in return, but your smirk says it all. You take that title and wear it like armor. After that, the lines blur. Sometimes you're running messages, sometimes guns, once or twice, money. Sam says it's too risky. You say risk is the only thing that ever loved you back. Your bond with Jesse doesn't last forever. Nothing outlaw ever does. But the lessons? They stay. Historians still argue whether Jesse James respected you or simply tolerated you. Whether you were equals, or if he saw you as a distraction. But you remember the way he always paused before answering your questions. The way he listened when you spoke. And that's enough. The Cherokee Strip becomes your playground. You know every ridge, every dry creek bed, every abandoned trading post with floorboards hollowed for stashing loot. You're not just surviving anymore. You're orchestrating. Your family, if you can call it that, expands. Pearl's growing older, more curious, asking questions about the men in your stories and the scars on your hands. Edwin is still young, but he already rides like he was born in the saddle. You don't sugarcoat anything. You tell them what life is out here: beautiful, brutal, and brief. There's a fringe tale, probably made up, that says you once held a Sunday school lesson in your kitchen. That you read from the Bible while cleaning your revolver. And every child who showed up left with a peppermint and a warning. Don't trust anyone but your horse, you supposedly said. And even then, check its eyes. Maybe that story's false, but it sounds exactly like you. Sometimes you sit by the river at dusk, watching the sun bleed into the water. You wonder what kind of woman you could have been if you'd stayed in Missouri. Married some banker, learned how to bake without burning the crust. Then you hear gunfire in the distance. You see your reflection in the water, hat tipped low, pistol at your side, and smile. No, you were never meant for a quiet life. You were born for thunder. Mud sticks to everything. To your boots. To your horse's belly. To the rumor that you had a hand in more murders than you'd ever admit. The Cherokee Strip is wide and lawless. Swamps ooze into old wagon trails. And the fog hangs low like it's eavesdropping. You ride slow through it. Rifle slung across your lap. Hat pulled down to hide the recognition in your eyes. Because you're not alone out here. And the trees have mouths. Sam's crew is growing. Some are loyal. Some are desperate. All are dangerous. They steal horses. Ambush payroll caravans. And when needed, bury problems in shallow graves near the river bend. You don't ask questions unless you already know the answer. That's how you survive. You've built something that looks like a home. Timbers nailed together with lies and iron nails. It creaks when the wind changes. And you swear the floorboards shift if you speak too loud. But it's yours. And that means something. It's a fortress for ghosts. One night, a boy knocks at your door. 14, maybe 15, mud up to his knees. Says he's looking for Sam. Says someone wants him dead. You let him in. You don't ask why. Later, you'll learn he killed a marshal's nephew over a card game gone sideways. You don't turn him in. That's the kind of place Younger's Bend becomes. Where fugitives sleep beside fire pits and children learn to reload before they learn to read. Historians call it a hideout. You call it a family. Still, the law doesn't forget. Fort Smith is sending more marshals. Pinkerton men in bowler hats walk the saloons asking questions with too many teeth in their smiles. And bounty hunters start whispering your name again. But they don't whisper for long. Not when they realize what happens to those who get too close. Fringe rumors claim there's a map, hand-drawn in blood, hidden somewhere under your cabin floor, showing the drop spots of every heist from Arkansas to the Indian Territory. One man swears he saw it once. He disappeared 3 days later. Folks say the coyotes wouldn't even touch what was left. True or not, the myth is enough to keep most out. You never saw yourself as evil. Just efficient. You help the poor sometimes. You hand out jerky and spare bullets to widows who've lost everything. You shoot warning shots near ranchers who underpay native laborers. You threaten, but rarely kill. It's not about blood, it's about message. You become a ghost story with a heartbeat. Historians still argue about the body count. Whether it was 1 or 20. Whether you pulled the trigger or just whispered to the hand that did. But out here, guilt doesn't ride the trail with you. It sits quietly by the fire, waiting for a slower horse. Sam changes, too. He grows quieter, more calculating. You see it in his eyes. He's planning something. Something big, something that doesn't involve you. The distance creeps in like mold. One night, he doesn't come home. The next, he smells like perfume that isn't yours. You don't ask. You just watch. The creek behind the cabin swells with rain. And in it, you see reflections that shouldn't be there. A stranger's boots. A friend's knife. A betrayal already halfway done. Still, you play your part. You smile when Sam lies. You kiss him on the cheek and hand him fresh cartridges. You tuck your children into bed with stories about brave mothers and cowardly kings. But your hand lingers too long on the revolver at night. You start writing alone more. Checking fence lines that don't exist. Visiting graves without names. The saddle becomes your church. The trail your confession. Mainstream historians point to this period, late 1870s, as the time your reputation peaked. You're spotted in towns 200 miles apart on the same day. You're blamed for train robberies you didn't commit. But you don't correct anyone. Because infamy is better than invisibility. And you've never been one to fade quietly. You wear black more often now. Not for mourning, but for armor. A black velvet riding dress. Twin pistols strapped to your thighs. And a wide-brimmed hat that casts shadows across your smirk. You don't knock when you enter saloons. You don't apologize when you leave. There's power in being the nightmare they expect. They don't know you cry sometimes. Alone in the woods, gripping Jim's old saddlebag like a lifeline. They don't know you still carry a letter you never sent, written to your mother. Full of words like sorry and I tried. But it doesn't matter. Because mud sticks to everything. Even legends. You ride alone now. Not always by choice, but often by instinct. Sometimes Sam's crew joins for a stretch. But you don't talk as much as you used to. The air between you and them is thinner. Like something was said you can't take back, even if it never left anyone's mouth. The trees are quieter, too, less curious, as if even the land knows you're changing. It's not just the miles you cover, it's how you ride them. No trail too narrow, no storm too rough. Your horse, Venus, knows your moods better than most humans. She doesn't flinch when you hum to yourself or mutter curses into the wind. At this point, you know how to disappear better than you know how to stay. One summer morning, you cross paths with a family stuck in the mud. Their wagon's broken, the oxen are skittish, and the father looks at you like you're a ghost. You help anyway. You lift that wagon like it's yours. When the mother offers thanks, you just tip your hat. As you ride off, the little girl calls out, "Are you the lady bandit?" You don't answer. You just smile. That's enough. Mainstream historians treat these years like a pause. As if you were dormant. Hiding. But that's the thing about ghosts, they never sleep. You're not fading. You're watching. Listening. Learning who's talking and who needs a visit in the night. You still pull the occasional job. A stagecoach here. A courier there. Enough to keep your pockets lined and your legend fed. You hear whispers that Sam's working his own side deals. Maybe with federal agents. Maybe with other gangs. He gets sloppy, flashy, and then one day, you wake up and the man beside you is just gone. Not physically, emotionally. He sits at the edge of the bed, smoking a cigar that isn't yours. You ask where he's been. He says, "Don't start." You don't. You just reach for your boots and leave before breakfast. The Pinkertons show up again, like cockroaches in a new boarding house. Their suits are cleaner now. Their questions sharper. But they still can't pin anything on you. "You're good," one of them mutters after a pointless interrogation. "No," you reply. "I'm careful." Fringe historians claim you once posed as a laundress to eavesdrop on a marshal's plan to raid Younger's Bend. You then, accidentally, spilled lye on his trousers and rode off laughing. Some versions of the story say you left a playing card in his coat pocket, a queen of spades. There's no proof. But it feels true. The bounty on your head rises. Posters spread farther. Some say you've been spotted in Kansas City. Others say Mexico. One man in Louisiana swears he met you in a church. Dressed like a widow and reading psalms. You weren't in Louisiana that year. But again, why ruin the fun? Historians still argue whether you used these false sightings as cover for your real movements. Whether you paid people to wear your clothes, ride your horses, play your part. If so, You were orchestrating one of the first great games of misdirection in criminal history. But you always said people see what they want. One autumn, you're ambushed near a dry ravine. 4 men. One's a bounty hunter. The others? Hired guns. Probably drunk. Definitely stupid. They think you'll scream. You don't. 3 bullets later, they're limping home, and you're polishing your saddle. That same night, you write a letter to Pearl. You don't send it, but you write it. Don't fall in love with outlaws. And if you do, be the one with the better aim. Don't trust stories. They make heroes out of fools and corpses out of women who knew better. And don't let anyone call you pretty unless they've seen you reload in the dark. Your hand trembles as you sign it. Belle. Not Mama. Not yours. Just Belle. Because even now, after all this time, you know that names are weapons. And some are too heavy to pass on. The first time you see your face on a wanted poster, you laugh. It's not the picture that gets you, though the sketch artist clearly hadn't met you in person. It's the bold letters, wanted. Belle Starr. Horse theft. Accessory to robbery. Armed and dangerous. Armed and dangerous. Now that part, you'll admit, is fair. But what really makes you chuckle is the reward. $500. You think, that's all? For all the camps you've run. The men you've outsmarted. The lawmen you've embarrassed? They underestimate you. Again. And you love it. It's not long before more posters appear. New towns. Higher bounties. Your name whispered like a spell in saloons. Written in chalk on jail cell walls. To some, you're a folk hero. To others, a monster with a velvet hat. You lean into the legend. You start dressing for the part. Black velvet riding skirts. Twin pistols in polished holsters. And a wide-brimmed hat that casts your eyes in shadow. Not because you need to, but because image is armor. If they're already afraid, half your job is done. You ride through town slower now. Letting them see you. Letting them wonder whether you're here to trade or to rob. Sometimes both. And when you enter courtrooms, oh, you shine. Mainstream records show that Belle Starr was arrested at least 6 times, but only convicted once. The court proceedings read like theater. You walk in with your chin high. Your words sharp. Jurors squirm. Judges sigh. And you, well, you enjoy the show. In 1883, you're sentenced to the Detroit House of Corrections. Your crime? Horse theft. Your reaction? You winked at the arresting officer. That's the story. Anyway, fringe accounts say you used the trial as a platform, telling stories. Weaving charm. Mocking the prosecution in a southern drawl that made even the stenographer smirk. Some claim the courtroom was so packed. The gallery stood just to see your boots hit the floor. Inside prison, you don't whimper. You adapt. You teach the guards how to play poker. You braid your cellmate's hair. You organize laundry rotations like a commander deploying troops. You write letters to your children, carefully worded, gently wrapped in metaphor. Historians still argue whether your time in prison broke your spirit or sharpened it. Some say you left quieter. Others say you left with a list of names to track down later. But you know the truth. Prison taught you patience. And patience, darling, is fatal in the hands of someone like you. When you're released, you walk free into sunlight that feels older somehow. The world hasn't changed, but you have. Your swagger's heavier. Your jokes land colder. And there's a new weight in your step that even Venus can feel. Still, you ride. The press picks up your story again. Headlines paint you as the female Jesse James. You scoff at that. Jesse never rode side saddle in velvet with a shotgun balanced on his knee. Jesse never raised 2 children on gunpowder and grit. You're not Jesse. You're Belle. And Belle Starr doesn't need a man's name to earn respect. You keep moving. The law still trails you. New bounty hunters arrive every month. Young and eager. Hoping to make their name by ending yours. They don't last long. One tried to grab your wrist in a tavern. He left with a dislocated shoulder and a limp that, rumor has it, still acts up in the rain. There's a particular Pinkerton who bothers you more than the others. Tall, calm, smiles too often. He never tries to arrest you, just watches. Listens. Once, he buys you a drink. You let him. It's good whiskey. You're not like the rest. He says, "No," you reply, "They're still alive." He doesn't laugh. But he doesn't come back either. There's something about being hunted that makes you feel strangely alive. Every hoofbeat behind you could be death. Every shadow in the woods might whisper your name. But fear? Fear is a luxury you stopped affording years ago. So you laugh louder, drink deeper, and ride harder. Because if they're going to chase you, you might as well give them a damn good story. The courtroom smells like sweat and arrogance. You sit in the defendant's chair. Velvet skirts brushing the dusty floor. Hands folded neatly like you're attending church. Except no hymn is coming. Just the drawl of a prosecutor who thinks you're too pretty to be dangerous. And too female to be clever. Big mistake. Your eyes follow him lazily. You know this game. Theatrics. Smoke. Mirrors. He rattles off the charges: horse theft, aiding a known outlaw, possession of firearms while under parole. You nod once, just enough to keep them wondering if you're confessing or counting down the seconds before you make your move. The jury watches like they've paid admission. You don't blame them. You showed up with flair. You're not in chains. You're in black lace gloves. Your hat dipped just so. The barrel of a story tucked beneath your smile. When the judge says your name, you correct him. Miss Starr, if it pleases the court. It does not. But he says it anyway. Historians often cite this as one of your finest performances. You speak in metaphors, quote scripture, and somehow make half the courtroom forget you're on trial. You deny nothing. You admit even less. And then, with that sly shrug of yours, you say, "I never claimed to be a saint, Your Honor. But even the devil deserves a fair hearing." The courtroom doesn't know whether to applaud or gasp. Mainstream coverage paints you as a manipulative vixen, charming her way out of shackles. Fringe historians see you as a proto-feminist icon, twisting a justice system designed to crush women into a stage for your own mythology. The truth? You're just good at reading people. You know when to cry, when to smirk, when to let silence speak louder than any argument. You win the case. Technically, the jury finds you guilty but recommends leniency. You pay a fine, walk free. Again. Later, you hear one juror say, "She ought to teach lessons in getting away with murder." You don't turn around, but you smile. Another town, another trial. You lose track of how many. Some you're arrested for, others you're warned about ahead of time. But in all of them, your charm is your gun. You never show it first. But when you do, it hits. Back home, if Younger's Bend can be called that, you keep things running. Pearl's older now. She's got your spine and Sam's eyes. She watches you the way a hawk watches a snake. Fascinated, wary, and secretly impressed. Edwin's still young, still soft. He sleeps with his boots by the bed. Just in case. You try to shield them from the worst of it. But you know that's a lie. You raised them on the run. In a world where promises are like bullets, quick, loud, and rarely where they were meant to land. One night, you sit around the fire with a few of Sam's boys. They drink, tell stories. One asks if the rumors are true. That you once stole a marshal's horse, rode it across the county line, then mailed it back with a thank you note. You lean forward, eyes gleaming. No note. You say, "Just the saddle." They laugh, but they never ask again. There's a fine line between fear and respect. You walk it in heels and spurs. Historians still argue whether your courtroom escapes were luck or genius. Whether the judges truly believed your stories or were too stunned by your audacity to object. But deep down, you know the real secret. You understood performance. Better than any actor. Better than any preacher. You weren't just Belle Starr. You were whoever the moment needed. A grieving widow. A mother. A lady. A liar. And somewhere under all of it, the truth. You don't hide it. You just wrap it in silk and let them dig for it. Because the longer they search for the real you, the longer you get to ride free. You don't cradle your children like porcelain. You raise them like saplings in a thunderstorm, bent, battered, but never broken. Pearl watches everything. She folds your dresses while your revolver's dry on the line. She learns to gut a fish before her first kiss. And when the local boys make fun of her boots, she bloodies a nose with her lunch pail and never flinches. You don't scold her. You just nod. Edwin's different. He's gentler, softer in ways that make your chest tighten at night. He asks questions, too many. About death. About why you carry knives in your sleeves. About why people whisper your name like it's cursed. You give him the best answers you can. Because stories keep us alive. Son, even the scary ones. Mainstream historians often write about how Belle Starr would grow to become a notable figure herself. Running saloons. Navigating the outlaw life in her own way. But they gloss over what it meant to be raised in your shadow. To fall asleep hearing gunfire in the distance and wondering whether mama made it home. Fringe reports claim you once shot a man for looking at Pearl the wrong way. Others say you simply whispered something in his ear, and he left town before sunrise. You never confirm. That's part of the magic. The homestead becomes a halfway house for bandits, dreamers, and strays. You take in what others discard. Sometimes for money, sometimes for companionship, and sometimes just because the silence is too loud. You teach the young ones to shoot. Not to kill, but to mean it. You feed everyone who's honest enough to ask for food. And threaten anyone who touches your fence without permission. You don't run a school. You run a kingdom. At night, you sit on the porch, watching Pearl mend a saddle. Edwin trying to lasso the rooster again. You sip something strong, listening to the coyotes argue with the moon. You think, maybe this is enough. But then the wind shifts. And you know it never is. Sam is in and out. Sometimes gone for weeks. When he returns, he smells like gunpowder and perfume. You ask nothing. He offers less. Your children see the cracks forming. Pearl stays quiet, but you catch her watching you with eyes too old for her face. Edwin clings harder to your legs, as if the house itself might splinter while he sleeps. You begin sleeping lighter. The sound of boots outside jolts you upright. Your hand finds the revolver before your eyes find the light. You've lived too long in crosshairs to ever feel safe. Still, you try. You plant beans. You hang laundry. You read Pearl lines from a ragged Bible, letting the words fall like ash into her lap. But you also train her hands to load a shotgun in 8 seconds flat. Historians still argue whether you were truly maternal, whether your love came from guilt or instinct. But they weren't there when Pearl sliced her thumb and you stitched it shut without blinking. Whispering, tough girls scar better. They didn't see the way Edwin wrapped his arms around your waist when the marshals came sniffing. Or how you stared down 5 men with badges and nothing to lose, just to buy him one more morning of childhood. This isn't a family built on softness. It's built on knowing the world will break you if you don't shoot first. One winter, when food runs low and Sam's been gone too long, you ride alone to the Choctaw border to trade pelts and silver for supplies. You meet a woman there. Older, worn. She asks if you're Belle Starr. You hesitate, then nod. She says, "My brother said you saved his life once." You don't remember doing it, but you smile anyway. She hands you 2 pounds of flour, a jar of molasses, and says, "No charge." As you ride home, frost in your lashes and rifle at your back, you wonder how many people carry pieces of your story, good, bad, and somewhere in between, because for all the tales they'll tell, this is the one you live. There are names you remember, and names you forget on purpose. Lovers come and go like thunderheads on the prairie, loud, fast, and usually leaving more mess than rain. Some are nothing but shadows and candlelight. Others carve their initials into your life like tree bark. After Sam, you don't swear off men, but you start asking fewer questions. They're not partners anymore. They're passing horses on the trail. Useful, sometimes, but rarely worth naming out loud. Then there's the gambler from Fort Smith. Handsome, silver tongue, eyes like dusk. He says his name is Jack. Or maybe John. He changes it depending on who's buying drinks. You don't trust him, but you let him stay a while. He fixes the back fence. He plays cards with Pearl. He sings when he thinks no one's listening. And then one day, he's gone. No note, no boots missing, just absence. You check the barn, the creek, even the drawer where you keep the pistol with 2 notches on the handle. Nothing. Historians never found his real name. Fringe stories claim he was an undercover Pinkerton agent who fell for you and couldn't bring himself to finish the job. Others say he wasn't real at all. That he was a ghost. A hallucination conjured by loneliness and too many nights talking to the stars. You don't confirm. You don't deny. That's the thing about being Belle Starr. You know how to keep secrets buried deeper than bullets. And then there's the governor. You never met him, technically, but he knew of you. There was talk, quiet, careful talk, about pardons. About making an example of a reformed outlaw mother. You played along, sent letters, posed for a photograph in borrowed lace. But nothing came of it. Maybe they were just trying to buy time. Maybe they wanted you docile. Or maybe they just enjoyed watching a queen kneel. You stood anyway. Mainstream historians skim past this part. They say your final years were quieter, more domestic, but they miss the ache that comes with trying to be something you're not. You cook, you mend, you ride to town and buy ribbon for Pearl's hair. And every now and then, you think, maybe it's possible. But then the wind shifts again. Someone poisons your well. You don't know who, but you've got guesses. The gambler? A jealous rival? A bounty hunter too cowardly to shoot? Or maybe Sam. Maybe he came back one night, left something bitter behind, and disappeared again into the folds of your legend. Historians still argue whether your later lovers truly loved you, or just wanted to tame the myth. You don't bother arguing, because love, to you, was always a luxury, like clean boots or second chances. Nice when it's real, but never required. There's a scar on your left arm. Small, thin, from a man who thought, no, was just a game. You buried that man by the river. You told no one, except the dirt. Fringe stories claim you visited his grave every year. Left a red ribbon tied to a tree. Maybe guilt, maybe warning, maybe both. One man writes a poem about you. Never publishes it, but carries it in his coat until the day he dies. His widow finds it, frame it, sells it. You never saw a dime. You never asked. Because Belle Starr doesn't chase ghosts. She rides ahead of them. Always. You dress for war now. Not for weather. Black velvet riding skirt, stitched with dust. Crimson trim, faded, but still there, like a whisper of defiance. You wear the same wide-brimmed hat you've had for years. Now faded by sun and blood and stories. You don't wear it for fashion. You wear it because people expect you to. You've become something larger than yourself, an emblem, a warning, a flicker in the peripheral vision of lawmen. People don't see Belle anymore. They see the Bandit Queen. It starts to feel like a costume. Sometimes. But it works. You ride side saddle, straight-backed, guns hidden and visible all at once. You practice every movement until it looks effortless. The reins in your left hand. The derringer tucked into your boot. That glint in your eye that tells every man in the saloon, yes, I heard you. Yes, I could kill you. No, I won't, yet. Mainstream newspapers begin to romanticize you. They write of you as a southern belle gone wild. A mysterious outlaw with the manners of a lady and the aim of a soldier. Some call you, the female Jesse James. As if they can't explain your notoriety without tying it to a man. You smirk every time you read that. Because Jesse? He never rode side saddle with a pink ribbon tied to his holster. You did. You still do. In fact, you make a habit of riding into towns with no warning. Just you, Venus, and a storm behind your eyes. You buy supplies, tip your hat, leave a coin on the bar even when you don't drink. You want them to talk. Fear, after all, is the most loyal currency. Fringe accounts say you once rode into Fort Smith and dared the sheriff to arrest you. When he didn't, you left a playing card on his desk. Queen of Hearts with your initials burned into the corner. The next day, he retired. No one ever proved that story. But no one ever dared ask you about it, either. Still, the crown gets heavy. Pearl starts asking questions you can't answer. Did you really rob that train? Why does everyone flinch when you walk past? Do you have to carry a gun to church? You tell her the truth. As best you can. Yes, because I'd rather be feared than buried. Pearl's eyes narrow. She's learning. And she's good at it. Too good. You wonder if she'll follow your path. Or just inherit the shadows you left behind. Edwin, on the other hand, is quiet, thoughtful. He draws pictures of horses and dreams of places where the land stretches on without fences. Without wanted posters nailed to trees. You don't tell him those places don't exist. You let him hope. Historians still debate whether you intentionally leaned into the legend. Whether the black velvet, the long rides, the saloon standoffs were performances, or just defense. But you know the truth. It was survival. In a world built for men with guns. You learned to wear yours like a crown. And the crown? It gleamed. It scared them. It worked. One autumn day, you catch your reflection in a window. You barely recognize her. Not because she looks older, though she does. Lines around the eyes. A jaw set a little harder. No, you don't recognize her because she's alone. Even in the stories they tell about you. Belle Starr is always surrounded by men, Sam, Jim, Jesse, Pinkerton hounds. But here, it's just you. You and the silence. And the silence? It's starting to feel closer. Like something is coming. Not a trial. Not a posse. Something quieter. Something final. The air tastes different on the day it happens. You don't know why. Just that it does. There's a weight to it. Like the sky itself is holding its breath. Waiting for someone to make the wrong move. The horses are restless. Pearl's too quiet. Even the wind feels like it's spying on you. You saddle Venus just after dawn. You're heading toward the creek crossing, a familiar path. One you've ridden 100 times. It's where you check the fence line. Where you like to ride alone when the house gets too crowded with memories. You don't bring Edwin. You don't bring Pearl. Just you, your hat, and a loaded revolver hidden beneath your cloak. Something in your gut twitches. Maybe it's age. Maybe it's instinct. You ride slow, eyes scanning the brush. Every leaf rustle sounds like breath. Every shadow looks like a man trying to decide if today's his lucky day. Mainstream records tell it like this. Belle Starr, aged 40-something, was ambushed and shot twice, once in the back, once in the neck, while riding home from a neighbor's house near the Canadian River. She fell from her horse and died alone in the mud. But that's not how you remember it. Because in your version, you knew. The second the trees went still. The moment Venus snorted, hooves stuttering in the dirt. You knew. There's no shout, no warning, just a sudden bloom of pain. Hot and spreading, like a match struck too close to your skin. Your hands flinch too late. The reins slip. The sky tips sideways. You hit the ground hard. You're face down, cheek pressed against the cold, damp soil. You taste blood and moss and regret. And you think, so this is it. Not a gunfight, not a trial, not even a name shouted in anger. Just silence. Fringe reports say your killer was a jealous lover. A man you once humiliated in public. Others claim it was a hired gun, paid off by a rival gang or even the Pinkertons. One rumor blames your own son, Edwin, though that tale feels cruel even to you. Historians still argue whether it was personal or political, revenge or convenience. But in the end, it doesn't matter. You bleed the same either way. Venus stands nearby, pacing, confused. She noses your shoulder once. Then again. You try to move. You can't. But your eyes, those don't close yet. You see the sky shift above you. Blue turning to gold, just like the stories. The leaves rustle once more. Like applause. Like goodbye. And then, you hear it. A footstep. Slow. Deliberate. You want to turn your head. Want to see the face behind the bullet. Want to ask, why? But your breath hitches. And the world fades. Not in darkness, but in blur. Your final thought? Should have ridden a different trail. But then again, you always knew how this would end. Because women like you don't get quiet endings. You get crossroads. They find you the next morning. Face down, dress soaked through with blood and dew. Hat a few feet away, resting gently against a rock like it bowed out before you did. Venus is still there, mud-streaked, eyes wide, waiting for a command that won't come. Pearl screams when she sees you. Edwin just stands still, fists clenched so tight they turn white. He doesn't cry, not yet. The neighbors rush over. Someone covers your body with a blanket. Another swears vengeance. A few men ride off to fetch the marshal. But no one really believes justice is coming. Not this kind of justice. Mainstream newspapers eat it up. The Bandit Queen slain. They print woodcut illustrations of your body sprawled in the dirt. More dramatic than the truth. Less painful than the reality. One article says you were ambushed by 3 men. Another says it was a lone figure in a black coat. A third claims you were shot over a poker debt. They don't know. They weren't there. Pearl insists it was someone you knew. She saw you the night before. How tense you were. How your eyes scanned the tree line even while you stirred beans over the fire. Fringe historians obsess over your final hours. They comb through court records. Property disputes. Love triangles. Grudges stretching back decades. The most persistent theory? A man named Edgar Watson, a neighbor. An ex-convict. A man you reportedly tried to keep off your land. Witnesses say he threatened you once. Others say he was far away that day. Some swear he confessed before he was shot down himself years later. Historians still argue whether your death was cold revenge or a random act of violence. But you'd probably just laugh. Because the truth has always mattered less than the story. And your story only grows after death. Pearl buries you herself. Beneath an elm tree at Younger's Bend. She carves the name Belle Starr into a piece of driftwood. Stakes it into the earth with shaking hands. No sermons. No hymns. Just wind. And silence. The newspapers make you into something cinematic. They publish poems about your beauty. Your cruelty. Your charm. One calls you the Outlaw Enchantress. Another dubs you the Lady Jesse James. Still trying to fit you into a man's frame. They never figure it out. You weren't a sidekick. You weren't a victim. You were the story. Pearl becomes the keeper of your name. She fights for your legacy. Opens saloons. Sells souvenirs. Answers questions from strangers who want to know whether her mama really rode with Jesse James or robbed trains in a black veil. She says yes to most of them. Because why not? You taught her how to turn bullets into bedtime tales. How to control the narrative. How to wear grief like a badge. Sometimes she visits your grave with a cigar and a flask. Sits there for hours, just watching the river. I told you that man was no good. She says one night, half smiling. A whippoorwill calls out from the trees. She takes that as an answer. Fringe folklore grows around your death. That you still ride at night. That travelers see your ghost near the crossing. Side saddle and silent. Guns holstered. Hair blowing behind you like smoke. Some say you whisper warnings. Others say you smile and vanish. One woman swears she saw you just before her own wedding, riding through the mist with a bouquet of black roses. Run, you told her. She didn't. She wishes she had. That's the thing about legends. They don't die. They multiply. And you? You've become 100 different women now. A queen. A ghost. A gun in the night. Somewhere between the headlines and the hush. You become untouchable. No longer just Belle. The woman who rode through mud and bullets and betrayal, but Belle Starr. The myth with velvet gloves and a steel spine. They write songs about you now. Mostly wrong. Mostly flattering. Fiddlers in Texas saloons croon about your beauty. Bar poets in Kansas whisper about your vengeance. None of them ever met you. But that doesn't matter. You're bigger than truth now. Mainstream museums hang your wanted posters beside rusted revolvers. Carefully framed behind glass. Tour guides recite your crimes like bedtime stories, Belle Starr. Queen of the Oklahoma Outlaws, convicted horse thief. Widow. Mother. Mistress of the infamous Sam Starr. They say it all like it's been settled. Neat. Contained. But it never was. Fringe writers dig deeper. They try to peel back the layers. They ask, was Belle a victim of the system? A woman surviving in a world stacked against her? A rebel with her own code? Some call you proto-feminist. Others call you cold-blooded. A few just call you complicated. And that, at least, feels true. Historians still argue whether your legend was built by you, or built for you. Some believe you leaned into it, planting rumors like seeds, watching them grow into protective shadows. Others think you were swallowed by your own reflection. A woman trying to raise a family while riding under the weight of a myth too large to carry. The debate is endless. But while they argue in libraries, you still ride in dreams. Truckers in the Midwest swear they've seen a woman on horseback appear in the rearview, only to vanish when they blink. Hikers in Oklahoma find boot prints too small for any man, yet perfectly spaced for someone born in a saddle. Tourists leave trinkets at your old homestead, buttons, bullets, black lace ribbons. Pearl keeps your name alive for years. Opens a bar, hires a pianist who only knows outlaw ballads. She sells photos of you to reporters, always with that same line. She was more dangerous than Jesse, and better dressed. Eventually, she stops answering letters, because what more is there to say? Your name has already inked itself across America's spine. In dime novels, you become exaggerated, half assassin, half seductress. In those stories, you ride with 6 shooters and diamonds. You rob banks solo. You kill bounty hunters with one hand while lighting cigars with the other. And the strange thing? People believe it. Because they want to. They want to believe a woman could be all those things. Sharp. Wild. Ruthless. Elegant. They want to believe that somewhere in the past, someone refused to kneel and made the world flinch because of it. You gave them that. A template. A threat. A promise. Fringe legends even place you in alternate timelines, surviving the ambush, escaping to Mexico, faking your death and living under a new name in Nevada. One claims you became a fortune teller. Another insists you turned outlaw turned author, living off the proceeds of your own legend. None of them are provable, but all of them sound like something you'd do. Maybe that's why your story lives on. Not because it ended in violence, but because it never really ended at all. The stories don't stop. Decades pass, then a century, but your name still floats, like smoke, like folklore, like something too stubborn to settle. Belle Starr. It's whispered in old barns and frontier museums, tattooed into Western pulp novels, printed on souvenir mugs. Your grave becomes a roadside attraction. Tourists leave coins on the stone, not out of tribute, but superstition. They say it brings luck. Others say you'll curse them if they don't. And somewhere, deep in the weeds of Oklahoma, your legend still walks. Mainstream documentaries try to box you in. They present timelines, police records, cross-reference dates and trial transcripts. They use words like allegedly and reputedly, words that say everything and nothing at once. They say you were complex, misunderstood, dangerous. Then they cut to black and roll credits. Fringe authors go further. They dig through census records, family Bibles, dusty journals passed down through families who swear you stayed at their great-grandmother's house for one night in 1885. They argue over the shape of your nose in photographs, over whether your pistol grips were ivory or mother of pearl. One claims you kept a diary. Another insists you never wrote anything down. A third believes your entire persona was invented by Pearl to protect you, and that Belle Starr was a cover name all along. Historians still argue if Belle Starr ever truly died at that creek. Because strange things happen. Too many sightings. Too many stories told by people who shouldn't know your name, but do. Some say a woman who looks like you rode into Galveston in 1907. Older but unmistakable. She bought whiskey, paid in gold, smiled like she knew too much, then vanished. Others say your ghost has been seen near Younger's Bend, on misty mornings. Just before sunrise, riding side saddle and silent through the tall grass. But maybe you're more than a ghost. Maybe you're a pattern. A woman who keeps being born again. In every generation that needs her. You don't just belong to 1800s Oklahoma anymore. You belong to every woman who refuses to be quiet. To every mother who sharpens her words like knives. To every daughter who won't apologize for surviving. You are, now and forever, a warning, a wink, a legend stitched into the seams of American myth. And while others are buried with silence, you ride on, into the tall grass, into the gun smoke, into the long, unbroken dusk. And now, the trail softens. The dust settles. The wind quiets just enough for you to hear your own breath again. You've just spent the night riding beside Belle Starr, through muddy creek beds, courtroom whispers, and the sharp edge of a legend that refused to be tamed. You felt the weight of velvet skirts dusted in gunpowder. You heard the laughter that lingered longer than the threats. And you saw, just for a moment, what it meant to live as a story, while still trying to be a mother. Let that echo sit with you for a bit. Because Belle wasn't just an outlaw. She was a survivor, a strategist, a woman who played a game rigged from the start, and still walked away with her name carved into history. Not every ending comes with closure. Sometimes, the hero doesn't ride off into the sunset. Sometimes, she vanishes into fog, with just enough mystery left behind to keep you wondering. You might find yourself thinking about her tomorrow. When the world tries to press you into something smaller, quieter, you might remember her the next time you need to choose between fitting in and riding alone. And maybe, just maybe, you'll tip your hat to no one in particular. And smile. Because now, you know what it means to ride like Belle Starr. So take a deep breath. Feel the saddle shift beneath you one last time. The ride is over. For now.